Hello and welcome back to my channel. For this card, I am using Dad plus Me and Critters in the Arctic. And these are both from Fawn, and I am using the moose from both of these stamp sets. This is actually a recreation of a previous card that I made, and I thought about using the bears, but because there isn't a bear that is drawn in a similar way to the two in Dad plus Me, I decided I would just stick to the moose again. To color these moose, I am using my E70 Copics. These are actually my favorite brown color combination, and one where I would recommend this if you are looking to expand your Copic collection or start growing your Copic collection. I find this very useful for critters. It's just, to me, a very nice brown. Now, I mean, you might not like it, and no pressure. But for me, it's my favorite one. I don't use it enough, but it's mostly because I've been coloring lots of squirrels and mice. As always, as I'm coloring, I am going in, trying to map out where my shadows are, and then I'm just going out from there with my midtone and then the lightest color. Which, as I say this, I usually am way heavier with my lightest color. So I don't color it probably correctly. You probably should have the midtone as the bulk of the image and the highlight less and the shadow less, but color how you like. This took a little while to blend. The colors are fairly close together, but this, I want to say this was the E70 marker. It's just so light that I did have to work this a little bit to get it to blend. And it's not that difficult. You just have to layer your markers a few times until the paper... I cannot talk. This is very common for me. I am sorry. Oh, goodness. If you've been around for a while, I guess you're used to it. Anyway, once the paper is saturated with the ink, it does blend a lot better. Also, some of the slightly rougher texture kind of works for critters because they're not smooth anyway. Now here I'm bringing in my darkest E70 marker that I showed you, which I believe was the E77. I can't remember for sure. I only use this on the hooves of the moose, and that was it. I'm coloring the smaller ones the exact same way as I did the big one. Now, I know I say this a lot, but again, I am sorry for the sound quality this time. I am unable to record where I normally do because we still haven't finished remodeling that area, and it's currently very empty because we were sanding, and the echoes were just so bad. I could not handle it. Also, what I'm using to record my sound with is not what I normally use, and the sound quality isn't necessarily as good. So again, sorry for that. If it's bothering you, you could just mute me. It's not ideal, but there's not a whole lot of options right now for me. To color in the antlers, I'm just using some E40 markers. I wanted to keep them very light, but I still wanted them to have a little bit of shadows. So same with the rest of the moose. I am just coloring in the shadows first, and then I'll go in with my second color, which is the second darkest color, and then I'm actually bringing in yet another E40 marker to make the lightest color, and that one is E41. Now, when I am not sure where I want to put my shadows, I do mark them out with my lightest color and then go back to my darkest color. And this just ensures that I actually like the shadow placement before I I lay down the dark color and sort of ruin what I've colored. It was a little bit messy here, so I'm just going to take my white jelly roll and I'm going to sort of cover up the areas that I have let my marker slip or it kind of bled out onto the rest of the paper. If you've never colored on camera, just know that it's a little bit awkward and sometimes you do not have as good of control as you normally would. Now here I'm going to use my stamp positioner and I am going to stamp a few pieces. And the reason I'm using my stamp positioner is because I am going to do multiple colors of ink or multiple shades of ink. Now the first one is the little pond or whatever this is, and I'm going to ink it up with Hero Art Splash ink and Lawn Fawn Fish Tank. I'm starting with my lightest color, which is the splash color. I'm inking up the whole thing, I'm stamping it down, and then there's a couple ways you can go about this. One is to take the darker ink color and put it just on a few different areas of the stamp and then kind of soften it with a brush or a blending tool. Or you can do what I'm doing here, which I have these tiny little stick blenders, and I'm just taking the darker color from the ink pad on the blending tool and then kind of rubbing it here and there around the edges of my stamp. This will give me some darkened areas without having to risk ruining any of my markers or anything trying to layer a dark color over the stamped image. Because these inks right here, they are not alcohol friendly. And here you can see the importance of having a stamp positioner, because there is no way that I would have been able to keep my stamped image in the same place if I was using just a regular stamp block, especially with the amount of times that I had to restamp it. Alright, now I have celery stick and fresh cut grass from Lawn Fawn, and I am going to stamp the little grasses or cattail plant pieces. You guys know I'm not good with plants. But anyway, I'm just stamping these in 2 different colors, and you don't have to. I did it just for some slight variation, and you're not going to really see it too well. Like, it's there, but it's not something that's just going to pop out at you like, yeah, this was done in 2 different colors. So you could always skip this if you wanted, but I took the time to do it anyway. And now I have the little cattail piece. And for this, I am using dough and walnut ink, also from Lawn Fawn. Stamping it in the lightest color, dabbing on darker color, just to give it a little bit of variation. Here I have 3 rectangle panels cut out with one of the Lawn Fawn stitched dies. I have the stitched mountain borders dies, and I'm going to use one of the mountain dies to cut out my panel. And then I have the stitched grassy hillside borders dies, and I'm going to use 2 different ones of these. I'm actually going to cut out one from the bottom and one from the top just so they all have the right stitching detail on them. And I am using my mountain panel to kind of gauge how tall I need the back panel of grass to be. And then the little front one, I'm just making sure it's lower than the back one. After all those are cut out, I am then going to ink up each of the pieces, and I am going to use my distress inks for that. I have pumice stone and weathered wood. I'm starting with my pumice stone, and I'm just going to give the mountain some color. I am starting from the bottom so that if I get any kind of weird ink blotches, they're at the bottom where it's going to be covered up by my grass. Next, I'm taking my weathered wood, and I'm just going to darken up one side of each of the mountains. And this is just going to make it look a little shadowed. Now for my grass, I'm going to use mowed lawn, and I'm going to ink this up the same way I did the mountains. I'm starting at the bottom and working my way all the way up to the top. I do have to be a bit more careful with the front panel of grass just because there is nothing that's going to really hide if there's weird ink blotches. Now I'm taking Rustic Wilderness Distress Oxide. I'm smushing it, diluting it a little bit with water, and then I am just going to splatter my grass panels. This is just to give it a little more texture and interest. Next, I'm going to do the same thing with my mountains. This time I'm going to use weathered wood. And this doesn't have to be super splattery. I just wanted a little bit of texture there too. Now I have this cloud stencil, and I am going to use the Tumbled Glass Distress Oxide to ink up the little clouds on my panel. I start from the bottom, roughly. It's not the exact bottom because I know a lot of this is going to be covered up. And then I'm working my way up. I'm rotating the cloud stencil as I go so as not to have clouds that look exactly the same going all the way up. Once I have inked all the clouds, I'm taking the same ink and I'm going around the edges just so that it doesn't have some harsh white edges. And now I'm gluing my mountains to my cloud background. And then I'm going to glue my grasses onto my background, overlapping each other. Before I get too far though, I am going to stamp the things that I know I want stamped up there. And first I have this Simply Celebrate scripty sentiments. And I first, for some reason, pulled out Happy Mother's Day. I'm not sure. I think I was talking to my toddler or something and was distracted. But I have this Happy Father's Day sentiment, and I am stamping it with the fish tank ink. And then I am going to take my Weathered Wood Distress Oxide, and there is a few dragonflies. Well, no, I guess it's one dragonfly. I'm going to stamp it a few times. This one is from the Dad Plus Me stamp set, I believe. And I just added those to the background just to give it a little more interest. And now I'm attaching the last grass panel. I'm leaving the very top blades of the grass unglued so that I could tuck in my little pieces. So I've adhered my little pond down between the two grassy borders. And now I am placing my little cattails. All this stuff's just getting adhered flat. And for this one, I do cut off part of the stem just to make it a little bit shorter. That way they don't all look exactly the same. Now this is something I did to my previous card and I almost forgot, but I have this Wink of Stella clear glitter brush pen, and I'm just glittering the water a little bit so that it looks shimmery. Since it is supposed to be a masculine card, I didn't want to make it too glittery and shiny, but water, you know, sometimes has a shimmer to it, so I figured it was fine to put it on here. Now for the big dad moose, I am tucking his back legs behind the grass. And to finish it off, I do attach it to a slightly larger blue rectangle. And then here, for comparison, is the previous card that I made. And my card is complete. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll be back with another video soon. Bye!